I thought I was giving away a $12 meal, but I had no idea it would change everything. The rain poured relentlessly, dripping from the eaves and soaking my apron, yet I could not ignore the small figure huddled beneath the flickering street lamp, shivering and clutching an empty lunchbox, his eyes wide and filled with a mixture of fear and hope, his little hands trembling as he peeked through the glass of our bustling diner, watching strangers with longing that no one seemed to notice. I swallowed hard, my heart tightening as I grabbed a clean plate, scooping generous portions of food, each bite carefully arranged, hoping to provide warmth not just to his stomach but to his weary spirit, knowing full well that my manager might scold me for this small act of kindness, yet I could not walk away, not this time. Stepping outside, the cool air hit me, but I held the plate steady, extending it to him with a quiet smile, and his eyes lit up as if the sun had broken through the storm. Clouds, a faint gasp escaping his lips, and he whispered a soft thank you that seemed to echo louder than the clattering dishes and sizzling grills behind me. I knelt down so that my eyes met his, noticing the dirt on his knees, the tear streaks on his cheeks, and the way he hugged the plate as if it were a treasure beyond measure, and in that moment, I realized how fragile yet resilient children can be, how much weight a single act of care can lift off their tiny shoulders, and I felt its headlights cutting through the mist, and I shivered, aware that soon I would have to return to the warmth of the diner, to the hustle of orders and tips, yet part of me lingered with him, feeling the bond formed in the briefest of encounters, the silent understanding that sometimes, courage is not about grand gestures but the bravery to care when it costs nothing but everything. I straightened, offering one last smile before retreating, feeling the wet fabric of my uniform cling to me, the rain mingling with the quiet triumph in my chest, and as I stepped back inside, the boy's eyes followed me, a small hopeful spark, and I knew that this single act of kindness, humble as it was, had planted a seed that could grow in ways I would never witness, a reminder that even the tiniest lights shine brightest in the dark. The morning light streamed through the diner windows, casting long golden streaks across the worn wooden tables and the checkered floor, and I moved between the customers with practiced ease, balancing plates and trays while keeping an eye on the small boy from yesterday, who now sat quietly in the corner, finishing his breakfast with a contented expression that warmed my heart. He looked up occasionally, meeting my gaze with shy gratitude, and I returned a gentle smile, knowing that small gestures had a way of leaving lasting impressions, that something as simple as sharing a meal could ripple far beyond what I could see, and the thought made me feel both humble and powerful in the quietest way possible. The bell above the door jingled as regulars came in, chatting amiably, the air filled with the aroma of brewed coffee and sizzling bacon, but my focus lingered on the boy, noting how his once rumpled coat now appeared a bit cleaner, his hair combed neatly, his eyes reflecting a trust that had not been there before. A trust that told me that our brief encounter had mattered more than I could have imagined. I continued my work, refilling coffee cups, taking orders, my hands moving deftly, but my mind wandered to thoughts of his life outside these walls, of the struggles hidden behind his bright eyes, of the potential that kindness could unlock if nurtured even in the smallest ways, and I felt a renewed sense of purpose, a conviction that every decision, no matter how minor it seemed in the moment, could create a chain of positive outcomes. I watched as he ate slowly, savoring each bite, and I could not help but notice the small details, the way he straightened his back as if gathering courage, the way his fingers held the utensils firmly yet gently, the soft hum of satisfaction escaping him with each chew, and it struck me that such simple moments of care could teach lessons of respect, dignity, and hope, lessons that might otherwise be lost in the hurried, indifferent rhythm of life around us. The morning passed with this quiet rhythm, the boy occasionally glancing toward the door as if expecting someone, a small frown of concern appearing and disappearing, and I felt an anticipation mingled with anxiety, wondering what the next encounter might bring, how the world outside might respond to his small existence, and whether our connection could endure beyond these fleeting moments. As the diner bustled, I found moments to engage him gently, asking about school, about his favorite foods, about little things that revealed his personality, his humor, his curiosity, and with each exchange, I sensed a bridge forming between our worlds, a silent acknowledgement that human connection was not bound by age, circumstance, or status, but by empathy and the courage to act on it. And as I moved through my tasks, I carried a quiet hope that the boy would remember this morning not just for the food, but for the care, the attention, and the respect that affirmed his worth in ways words alone could never fully convey. The lunch rush hit like a wave, filling every booth and table with conversations, clinking glasses, and the constant movement of servers weaving through narrow aisles, and for a while I almost forgot about the boy sitting quietly in the corner. But the universe has a way of reminding you that every choice comes with a price, and mine arrived wearing a stained tie and a permanent scowl. I was carrying 2 plates of burgers to table 7 when I heard my manager call my name, his voice sharp enough to cut through the noise of the diner, and immediately my stomach tightened, because people did not get called into the office during a rush unless something was wrong. I handed off the food, forced a smile for the customers, and walked toward the back hallway, every step feeling heavier than the last, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead as I entered the cramped office where stacks of invoices and supply orders covered every available surface. My manager closed the door behind me and tossed a receipt onto the desk, his eyes narrowed, his jaw clenched. "Want to explain this?" he asked, tapping the paper with a finger, and I only needed one glance to know exactly what he was talking about. The meal I had given the boy, the one I had entered into the system under my own server number, hoping nobody would notice during the chaos of the previous evening. I swallowed hard but kept my voice steady. "He was hungry," I said. And for a second the room fell silent except for the hum of the old air conditioner in the corner. Then my manager laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Hungry?" he repeated, shaking his head. "You think this place is a charity?" I felt heat rise in my chest, not anger exactly but disappointment, because sometimes people become so focused on numbers that they forget they are dealing with human beings. "It was one meal," I said quietly, $12. He leaned forward across the desk. "That is not the point." And maybe to him it really was not. Maybe rules mattered more than circumstances, maybe profits mattered more than people. But standing there listening to him talk about policy and liability and employee conduct, all I could think about was the expression on that boy's face when he took his first bite, and somehow that memory made it impossible to feel regret. "You are paying for it," my manager finally said, pushing the receipt toward me. "Out of your own pocket." I looked down at the paper, then back at him and nodded. "Fine," I answered, because arguing would change nothing, and because some things are worth more than money. He seemed surprised by how quickly I agreed, but his expression hardened again. "And if something like this happens again, you are done here." The words hung in the air between us, heavy and final, yet instead of fear, I felt an unexpected calm, because deep down I knew I would make the same choice again every single time. He dismissed me with a wave of his hand, and I walked back into the dining room where the noise of the lunch crowd rushed over me once more. But everything felt different now, clearer somehow. I glanced toward the corner booth and found the boy watching me, concern visible in his eyes, despite his young age, as if he somehow understood what had happened behind that office door. And when our gazes met, he offered a small smile, the kind that carried gratitude far beyond words. And in that moment the $12 no longer felt like a cost at all. It felt like the easiest investment I had ever made. The next morning arrived with a strange calm that made the city feel almost serene, the sunlight streaming through the diner windows highlighting the familiar smells of coffee and freshly baked pastries. Yet beneath that calm lingered the anticipation of what might unfold, and as I arranged the tables and refilled the sugar containers, I could not shake the thought of the boy from yesterday and the lesson I had learned about kindness and its unpredictable ripple effects. The bell above the door jingled and I glanced up to see a man enter with an air of authority, tall and impeccably dressed, his presence commanding the room without a word, and I immediately recognized the subtle cues that spoke of power and control. His gaze scanned the diner with quiet intensity, stopping briefly on me, and I felt a mixture of apprehension and curiosity, the memory of the boy's grateful smile vivid in my mind. He approached the counter and his eyes softened slightly as he looked at me, a hint of recognition flickering there. Then he smiled and spoke with a calm yet firm voice, asking about the menu and complimenting the decor, making small talk with an ease that contrasted with his imposing presence. And as we spoke, the boy appeared at his side, tugging gently at his sleeve, their interaction natural and tender, showing the bond between them. The man listened to my recommendations, nodded appreciatively, and made a small gesture that indicated he trusted my judgment. My heart raced with the realization that this was the boy's father, the very man who held immense influence, and yet here he was, taking the time to acknowledge the simple effort of providing a meal for his son. I watched as he subtly observed the interactions of the other patrons, his attention to detail and quiet decisiveness evident. Yet there was no intimidation, only a commanding presence, paired with genuine concern for his child. I realized then that our small act of kindness had reached him, bridging a gap between strangers through the unspoken language of care and attention. The boy beamed at me, whispering something that made me smile, and in that moment the diner felt warmer, more connected, as if the world had shifted slightly to accommodate the unexpected meeting of everyday humanity and extraordinary circumstance. The man's demeanor never wavered, his eyes reflecting both gratitude and a sense of responsibility. He made a point of thanking me directly, acknowledging the effort without fanfare, and as he prepared to leave, he gave a small nod of approval that carried more weight than words ever could. I returned to my duties, the room buzzing with normal activity, yet inside I felt the lasting impact of the encounter, a quiet affirmation that acts of kindness, however small, can resonate far beyond immediate perception, shaping interactions in subtle yet profound ways. And as I glanced at the boy one last time before he left with his father, I knew that this moment would remain etched in my memory, a reminder of the unexpected intersections of lives and the gentle power of compassion. As the afternoon sun filtered through the diner windows, casting long warm beams across the checkered floor, I moved between tables with practiced ease, my mind still lingering on the extraordinary events of the morning, the boy's smile and his father's quiet nod replaying in my thoughts like a gentle echo. While outside the city hummed with its usual rhythm, I carried plates of food and refilled coffee cups, noticing the small gestures of gratitude from regular customers, yet always aware of the subtle undercurrent of yesterday's encounter and the unexpected connection that had formed. Suddenly the door swung open and the man entered again, the same composed aura enveloping him, his tailored suit catching the light and hinting at his careful attention to detail. He walked toward me with a measured pace, and the boy ran ahead, tugging at his sleeve, their presence immediately drawing the attention of the few remaining patrons. The man's eyes scanned the room with an intensity that was both commanding and protective. His gaze softened as it met mine, and for a moment, the diner seemed suspended in quiet anticipation. We exchanged brief words, polite and calm, his tone conveying authority without pressure, yet beneath it, there was warmth, a subtle acknowledgement of the bond that had begun to form. As I guided him to a small table, he gestured to the boy to sit, sharing a private exchange that made the child's face light up with delight, and I noticed the careful observation in the man's eyes as he assessed the surroundings, the cleanliness, the comfort, the subtle touches that make a place feel welcoming. His focus shifted back to me, his expression reflecting appreciation, a recognition of the small but meaningful acts of kindness that had unfolded. As I served them their meals, he asked questions about the ingredients, the preparation, genuinely interested in understanding the effort behind the food. And I answered, explaining each dish with a steady voice, feeling a mix of pride and slight nervousness. The boy chimed in occasionally, sharing his thoughts and preferences, making the moment light and natural. The man responded to his son with gentle attentiveness, each smile and word reinforcing their connection. I observed them, the scene unfolding with a rhythm that was both ordinary and extraordinary. The father's careful attention to his child, the child's admiration and trust, and my role in providing a simple meal that had created this ripple of human connection. As they finished, the man thanked me again, not with grand gestures but with quiet sincerity, and I realized that the morning's actions had left an enduring impression, a reminder that compassion, attentiveness and kindness can resonate far beyond expectation, shaping relationships and perceptions in ways that feel both profound and comforting. The boy waved as they departed, and I returned to my work, carrying the lingering warmth of this encounter, a subtle understanding that small gestures can bridge worlds, leaving a quiet but lasting imprint on the lives of those we touch. The room now felt fuller, not just with the aroma of coffee and food, but with the invisible threads of connection woven through the day, reminding me that even the simplest acts of generosity can spark unforeseen bonds that endure. The morning light streamed softly through the diner's large windows, casting a gentle glow on the checkered floor as I moved gracefully between tables, the lingering sense of yesterday's encounter with the boy and his father still fresh in my mind, each step careful yet automatic, delivering plates of breakfast and refilling coffee cups while observing the subtle interactions around me, the familiar faces of patrons offering nods and smiles, the hum of conversation forming a comforting background. I paused briefly near the counter to straighten a chair and caught a reflection of the man in the polished surface, his presence immediately commanding yet calm. He had returned without fanfare, entering with a quiet confidence that drew my attention without demanding it. The boy skipped ahead, their bond evident in the easy way they communicated. I watched as the father's eyes scanned the diner with quiet scrutiny, noting details with precision. Yet when they settled on me, flicker of recognition and gratitude softened the intensity. I approached to offer a fresh pot of coffee, and our conversation began in a tone measured and polite, discussing simple matters of the menu, ingredients, and the comfort of the diners. The child chimed in with excitement, sharing his preferences and reactions, creating a natural rhythm in our exchange that made the room feel warmer. The man responded with attentiveness and patience, acknowledging each comment and question with a gentle yet assured presence. I noticed the care in his gaze as he watched his son, a protective, thoughtful attention that radiated both authority and affection. We moved through the morning together in an almost choreographed flow, him observing, me serving, the boy contributing his own energy and curiosity, and in those moments, the connection established the previous day deepened, a subtle but enduring bond forming through small, meaningful interactions. I brought their order to the table, explaining each dish carefully, and the man's interest in the details reflected his respect for effort and attention. Our conversation continued, punctuated by the boy's laughter and the easy rapport that developed naturally. I found myself relaxing into the rhythm, the nervousness from initial encounters replaced with a quiet understanding. As the meal progressed, I saw glimpses of pride and satisfaction in the father's expressions, small gestures of thanks exchanged without grand declarations, the boy's delight and sense of comfort, reinforcing the atmosphere of warmth and trust. The morning unfolded with a gentle clarity, ordinary yet extraordinary in the human connections being quietly reinforced. As they prepared to leave, the father paused to speak softly, his words carrying sincere appreciation and recognition for the simplicity yet significance of the moments shared. The boy waved cheerfully, and I returned to my tasks. The diner now filled not only with the aroma of food, but with the invisible threads of kindness, attentiveness, and human connection that lingered. A reminder that small, thoughtful actions can create lasting impact, and that the bonds formed through everyday gestures can echo far beyond the immediate moment, shaping experiences and relationships in profound yet subtle ways, leaving a quiet, lasting warmth that permeated the space and carried forward into the day. The late afternoon sun filtered through the diner windows, casting warm patterns across the worn wooden floor as I moved between tables with quiet efficiency, the boy tugging at the corner of my apron to point out his favorite booth, his laughter light and infectious, the father observing from a corner with a calm, measured presence that seemed to anchor the room, every movement deliberate, yet his gaze soft when it met my own, acknowledging without words the bond that had grown through simple kindness and attentiveness. I refilled coffee cups and adjusted napkins while the boy chattered about his day, sharing small victories and discoveries, and I listened with genuine interest, noting the way the father's eyes followed us, a subtle blend of pride and cautious approval, our interactions flowing naturally, a rhythm formed of shared understanding and gentle humor. I carried plates of freshly prepared food to the tables, making small talk about flavors and preferences, the father responding with quiet attentiveness, his tone reserved but warm, occasionally sharing a story or a fact that revealed depth of character and care for his son, the boy's enthusiasm punctuating the conversation, and I noticed the subtle smiles exchanged between the two of them, a silent communication that spoke volumes about trust and affection. We moved through the afternoon in a seamless dance of service, observation, and quiet connection, the father making notes in his mind, notepad and pen absent, yet recording details of our interactions with meticulous care, every gesture considered, every smile acknowledged, the boy contributing his own energy, asking questions and laughing at small jokes, the father responding with encouragement and gentle correction, teaching moments woven effortlessly into casual conversation. I adjusted the seating and brought extra napkins, noting the father's careful attention to the boy's needs and comfort, his presence both protective and subtly guiding, the boy's eyes shining with admiration and joy, a clear reflection of the father's influence and the safe environment created through simple acts of kindness and respect. As the afternoon waned, I brought a small dessert to the boy, his delighted reaction drawing a rare chuckle from the father, and in that moment the warmth and connection between the three of us was palpable, a quiet testament to the lasting impact of thoughtful attention and human compassion. The father thanked me softly, his words carrying a depth of sincerity, acknowledging not only the service provided but the care and consideration behind each action. I returned to my duties with a sense of fulfillment, The diner alive with ordinary activity yet underpinned by extraordinary connection, the boy happily engaged in conversation, the father observing with steady affection, and I felt the quiet satisfaction of knowing that these simple, meaningful interactions had strengthened bonds, built trust, and left an indelible impression that would extend far beyond the walls of the diner, marking the afternoon as one of gentle impact and enduring warmth. The morning sunlight streamed through the diner windows, illuminating the polished counters and the soft clatter of dishes as I moved efficiently between tables, attending to customers while my mind lingered on the boy and his father, the little one seated eagerly at his usual booth, a bright smile spreading across his face as he recounted a story from the previous day, the father observing with measured calm. His presence both authoritative and quietly reassuring. I approached their table. With a fresh pot of coffee, the aroma mixing with the scent of baked goods, noting the subtle shift in the father's demeanor, the gentle relaxation of his shoulders and the faint curve of his lips suggesting appreciation and acknowledgement of the care extended to his son, the boy's laughter punctuated the air, a rhythm of innocence and trust that contrasted with the father's reserved attentiveness, our interactions flowing naturally, filled with small gestures of kindness and understanding. I refilled their glasses and checked that the meal was to their liking, the father responding with quiet words of thanks, his tone measured but warm, the boy chiming in with enthusiastic feedback and playful comments, weaving a lively tapestry of conversation that brought energy to the room. I moved around the diner, coordinating with other staff while occasionally glancing back at their table, noting the ease of rapport and the subtle ways the father showed consideration for the little one. Small touches, a reassuring nod, a shared glance, indicating a bond that was both protective and nurturing. The boy's excitement contagious, the father's composed presence grounding, a careful balance of care and guidance. I served desserts, the boy's eyes lighting up with delight, and the father offering a quiet smile, acknowledging not only the treat but the attention and effort behind it. The morning progressed with a steady hum of activity, the father remaining attentive yet unobtrusive, the boy animatedly engaging with both his father and the surroundings, our mutual awareness forming a silent connection built on respect, warmth, and trust, the subtle gestures, shared smiles, and attentive interactions creating an atmosphere of gentle connection, each action resonating with thoughtfulness. And as I returned to my duties, I carried the quiet satisfaction of knowing that the bond strengthened through simple acts of care would leave a lasting impression, the father's quiet approval and the boy's exuberance marking a morning defined by understanding, compassion, and the enduring impact of human kindness. The next morning began differently, and I felt it the second I turned onto the street, because the familiar row of parked cars that usually lined the curb had been replaced by a sight so unexpected that I stopped walking altogether, nearly dropping the cup of coffee in my hand. A line of black luxury vehicles stretched down the block, their polished surfaces reflecting the early sunlight like mirrors. People stood on the sidewalks staring, whispering to one another, pointing toward the diner. And for a moment I wondered if I had somehow walked onto the wrong street. But there it was, the same weathered sign, the same front windows, the same little diner where I had worked for nearly 4 years. Only now it looked like the center of an event nobody could explain. My pulse quickened as I pushed through the front door and immediately found every employee gathered near the counter, their voices low and nervous, my manager pacing back and forth while checking his phone every few seconds. And before I could ask a single question, the front door opened again, the room falling silent so quickly that even the sound of the coffee machine seemed louder. Damien Moretti stepped inside with the same calm confidence I had come to recognize, Ethan beside him wearing the brightest smile I had ever seen, and behind them followed several men in tailored suits carrying folders and documents. Nobody spoke, nobody moved. It felt as though the entire diner had forgotten how. Damien's gaze found mine almost immediately, and he gave a small nod before turning toward my manager. "Good morning," he said calmly. "I believe we have paperwork to finalize." Confusion spread across every face in the room, including mine. My manager straightened his tie and attempted a smile, but I could see the uncertainty behind it. The next 20 minutes felt unreal. Signatures appeared, documents changed hands, lawyers reviewed contracts, and eventually the truth emerged. Damien had purchased the restaurant, not part of it, not a partnership, the entire property, every chair, every table, every inch of it. The silence that followed was complete. My manager looked as though all the air had left his lungs, and I stood frozen beside the counter trying to understand what was happening. Then Damien turned toward the staff, his expression steady and composed. "This restaurant matters because of the people inside it," he said. "Especially the people who still remember how to care about others." His eyes shifted briefly toward me before continuing. "My son came here hungry, alone and unknown, and only one person helped him without expecting anything in return." Ethan immediately looked at me and grinned, causing several employees to turn in my direction. Heat rushed to my face, but Damien continued speaking. "Kindness is rare, and when you find it, you protect it." The words settled over the room like a quiet revelation. Then he reached into a folder and placed a document on the counter in front of me. I stared down at it, unable to process what I was seeing: a promotion, management training, and an opportunity to help lead the restaurant moving forward. My hands trembled slightly as I looked up. "Why me?" I asked softly. Damien smiled. Not the smile of a powerful man making a business decision, but the smile of a father who had witnessed something meaningful. "Because character matters more than resumes," he answered. Beside him, Ethan nodded enthusiastically as though the decision had been obvious from the beginning. Laughter spread through the room, tension disappeared, and for the first time in days I felt tears threatening to form, not because of the opportunity, but because of what it represented: one small act of kindness, one meal worth $12, one decision made on a rainy night without expecting anything in return. And somehow it had changed all of our lives. As sunlight poured through the windows and filled the diner with warmth, I realized something I would never forget. Generosity does not become valuable because it is rewarded. It becomes valuable because it reveals who we truly are. And sometimes the smallest kindness creates the biggest future.